Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5, and if I am not mistaken, episode number 869 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Monday, March 23rd, 2026, and it is a grayish day here at the Beaver Lodge, although no snow, and I can see a little bit of blue, and the sun may be fighting to make an appearance today. So, I'm going to consider it a good day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. But on that front, I do have some good news, kids and cubs. It does appear that my rehearsals for this week, for the little fundraiser that we will be doing the following week, are going to be taking place on Sunday only, not Saturday and Sunday, as was the case this week, which means that this Saturday I am free to be able to get down to the capital city for a pubcast. So, and I let Mr. Grizzly know that, and he said cool, which I guess is shorthand for yes, we're going to do this. So, pubcast this weekend. Yes, first one in a while, maybe even the first one of the year, maybe. Um, yeah, we've kind of fallen off our regular schedule a little bit here, but yeah, pubcast coming up. Woohoo! I love Pubcast Day. I really do. First of all, I get to spend time with my good friend. Two, we are greeted at the Lieutenant's Pump, which is always very, very good to us. We get some good nosh, and we get some time with you, Damn Fam. For those of you who are newer here, our podcast is typically a monthly thing we do, but we've fallen off our schedule to show you that there is more to us than just politics, and that politics should not be the entirety of your identity, which is the problem with a lot of people online these days. Um, yeah, it's important to be a well-rounded person and all that good stuff. So, and we create the podcast, which is a few hours that we spend together each month, where we talk about life, we talk about culture, we talk about sports, we talk about travel, we talk about anything except politics and religion. So whatever we do on our show regularly, we do not do that on Pubcast. So just goes to show, that you have to have other things going on, and whatever political party you support at any given time should not be a lifelong commitment like it is like to a hockey team or something. It's not a team jersey. It's not a sport. You don't cheer for your team no matter what. You don't say that the ref was blind every time. Uh, something, happens against your team or something of the sort, and that the ref got it right every time they penalized the other team. So yes, we try to show that there's more to us than just the political stuff that you know about us, and we hope to, at the same time, like I said, remind our listeners that uh, as fascinating as politics is, and trust me, I'm fascinated by it. I'm a total junkie. There's more. There's more to life. That's why, I talk about my theater and I talk about my curling and my tennis, and we travel, and we are a community involved as well, volunteering, all that type of stuff. It puts it all together because, and just time with friends and family as well, right? You got to tend the garden every now and then. So, you know, um, taking a break from the doom scrolling in order to actually have a life is very, very recommended and good for your mental health. So, if you can, please join us this weekend on our Pubcast. We usually start around 1 or 2 p.m., depending on whether or not I get there the day before or the day of. So we'll have more precisions with time, but usually it's around 1 or 2 p.m., and it will be the last Saturday of this month, which I believe, if I am not mistaken, maybe, let's see, I don't know what date that would be, and I don't have a calendar in front of me. If anybody could tell me that in the chat, I would very appreciate it. For some reason, I'm thinking 28th in my head, but I have a feeling I might be off by a day, but maybe not. Who knows? So yeah, very excited that we're going to get to do that because it has, like I said, been a while. Um, a big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Mystery Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Thank you for your continued and stalwart support. Very, very grateful. And kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? I have to say, I am doing very well. I am feeling surprisingly awake and refreshed, considering that I only got about 6 hours, perhaps a little bit less, um, but feeling very energetic and alert, which is very nice. I appreciate that. Had a wonderful weekend. Didn't do too much because we had two rehearsals this weekend. Um, Unfortunately, however, we heard that ticket sales for the fundraiser are not what we would like them to be. So we're hoping that there will be a final rush in the last 2 weeks as people make their plans, because we have a really fun show planned for them. It's nothing too heavy. We're just going to be getting together and sort of having a sing along night where we're going to be singing on the Friday and Saturday, sorry, the Thursday and the Friday songs. From musical movies or movies that had popular songs in them or stuff like that. And, you know, a few solos, but mostly, duets, trios, or just group numbers where we like take out certain portions and spread it around amongst each other, and hope that the audience joins us and sings along. And maybe the audience has a song or two from a movie that they would like to sing and come up, and we're happy to give the stage to them. So, sort of karaoke ish type get together. And on the Saturday during the day for the matinee for the kids, we are using specifically songs from Disney movies, with one exception, because of course it was kind of the song of the year. Um, we convinced our director, even though it is supposed to be a Disney day, to throw in "Golden" from K-pop Demon Hunters in there, because of course all of us can hit that high A. Not. I think it's a high A. So because I can't hit that note, I'm working on my Korean pronunciation for the four little passages. That's how I'm going to shine, darling. I'm actually going to pronounce the syllables as hopefully they were intended. Of course, we're all familiar with my extremely lengthy history with the Korean language, which is literally, um, whatever few K-pop songs I know. And to be totally honest, whenever they do come on and the K-pop portions come on, I just try to move my mouth in rhythm and make some sounds that kind of sound like what I'm hearing. But this is the first time that I actually looked up the pronunciation. Ah, boy. So yeah, jumping into the unknown. Hey, sometimes it's good to do some things that scare you every now and then. So yeah, we're hoping that those ticket sales will pick up over the course of the next 2 weeks because those sing along events are a lot more fun when there's a lot more people in the crowd. But we will be doing the events come hell or high water. And yeah, the reason we're doing this is because the theater company, unfortunately, um, because it typically does 2 shows a year, was not able to find theater space lengthy enough. We need about 3 weeks, with the setup and then the 2 weeks of the show to be able to do an April show this year like we normally do. Things were booked up in different ways, so we decided to do a fundraiser instead of having a second show, which is a little sad because I like the shows and I like the rehearsal process. But on the other hand, I do have to say, considering how busy things were and, we missed when we took a vacation for 3 weeks, well, other things pile up. And then we were there for a little longer. And it's amazing how many extra things pile up over the course of 4 or 5 days when you are not able to get to them. So basically, the last since I've been back, it's all about been scrambling and trying to, I got ahead on things before I left for what I knew, but there were still, life still happens, and and then with the 4 extra days that we did not plan for, 4 or 5 extra days, and then just being tired, needing a couple days to bounce back from that. So add a couple of days to that. We were very, very, very behind on things, and we've had to let a few things slip through the cracks. And of course, when you do that, then you have to get back to them, of course, and they're a little longer to manage. So, uh, but I think we're finally getting to the point where we're caught up ish. So we're not scrambling as much anymore. But there's still things, right? We have to get our taxes done before the end of the month, of course, and some scrambling, and certain anchors, and of course, we're trying to get ready for playoff season curling, which again is busy. And I just got a reminder yesterday. Oh, if you want to play tennis this year and you want to get the good rate, you better do that before the end of the month. And I'm sure that there were a couple of notices that have come before, and I didn't see them at all. So, so yeah, scrambling. We were even late with our municipal taxes over here this year because the bill came in after we left for vacation, and it needed to be paid um, before we got back ultimately from vacation. Had we got back on the proper day, it would have been fine, but we didn't. So got a little supplementary bill saying that you were late, so you owe us a little more, and you got to get that to us before the end of the month, or else you'll owe us a little more again. So, uh, like I said, when you get thrown a curveball or two, it's amazing how far you can fall behind. But like I said, we've clawed through, and this weekend, like I said, was a little bit more low key. 2 rehearsals, with a group of people that I love very much, and that we always have a good time. So that was pure joy. It didn't feel like an obligation whatsoever. There was lots of good curling for me to watch over the course of the weekend with the Women's World Championships and the Canadian team having their best performance. Team Anderson specifically with the silver. It was their fifth participation at the World Championships. They came back with 2 bronze and 2 placements so far. So this was the first time they made it to the gold medal match, and it was a pretty good match. But in all fairness, the Swiss did legitimately win that one. They made far fewer errors than Team Canada did, and Team Canada was in it pretty much until about the eighth end or so, I would say, and then yes. Slightly overzealous shot on the part of Team Canada somewhere near the end of the match made it such that their fates were sealed unless something absolutely spectacular happened, and something absolutely spectacular didn't happen. But still, silver medal, progress for Team Anderson. So that was a very, very, like I said, it was a great week of curling, regardless of what the outcome was. So a very, very satisfying tournament. And the 2 best teams by far were the best teams that were in the final. So it was very fitting. Very fitting. And now we get ready for the men's worlds that will be starting relatively soon. So, curling, there's still a little more curling left this season for those of you who are big fans. And of course, post Olympic quadrennial, there are a lot of changes on curling teams. People doing the switches and the musical chairs thing. So, that will be interesting to follow and give us some stuff. And then, of course, for those who are bigger fans, there's the Rock League starting with the Grand Slam of Curling people next year. So I'm not sure how they're going to fit all those extra matches in for the Rock League with the very busy schedule that they have already. But yeah, we're getting a curling league next year, which should be very interesting for those who are fans of the sport. All right, kids and cubs. So yeah, I'm in a very good mood. I'm in a very good mood, and I have some curling today. Later on, I think a first round of playoffs for my senior men's team. So hopefully that will go well. It always helps when you're in a good mood and feeling rested for it. That's for sure. All right, but enough about me, and let's get into today's meteor subjects, kids and cubs. Of course, some news already here that I don't have too many details about, but I did see you guys talking about it in the chat prior to the show starting. One about the plane crash at LaGuardia Airport involving an Air Canada plane which collided with a vehicle. I believe it was a fire truck. Um, if I'm not mistaken. It says a Port Authority vehicle, so I might be wrong about that. According to CBC, the broad outlines or the pilot and co-pilot were killed in the crash, according to authorities. Air Canada Express CRJ 900 plane operated by its partner Jazz Aviation was carrying 72 passengers and 4 crew members from Montreal to New York. A Port Authority spokesperson says the aircraft hit, quote, a rescue and firefighting vehicle. 41 passengers and crew were taken to the hospital. 9 remain there at the time of writing. Air traffic audio indicates the fire truck was cleared across the one-way before the collision. Quote, I messed up, a controller can be heard saying afterwards. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration grounded all planes at the airport. The president of the company that operated Air Canada Express flights says he's deeply saddened by the deaths of the pilot and first officer. Quote, today is an incredibly difficult day for our airline, our employees, and most importantly, the families and loved ones of those affected by the accident involving Flight 8646. Doug Clark, president of Jazz Aviation, said in a statement, quote, we extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of our 2 pilots and our unwavering support to those who have been injured. As the investigation unfolds, we are fully committed to cooperating with the relevant authorities to determine what happened. Let's see, is there anything else? There's a helpline that's been set up by Air Canada for friends and families of passengers that were on the flight. That's number is 1-800-961-7099. 1-800-961-7099. I will put that number in the chat here, kids and cubs. There you go, in case you happen to know anybody who's affected by this. I see Toronto Dan writing, I love shredded wheat. I used to too before I found out I was allergic to it. Oh my God. It's amazing what catches my eye in the chat as I look on the side every now and then. And then, of course, there's going to be a lot of discussions as to whether or not one of the sources of this accident, or one of the causes of this accident, is what's going on in the United States with proper funding, because the Democrats, if I remember correctly, are not cooperating with the Republicans on funding. I think it is the Department of Homeland Security, until the Department of Homeland Security makes some changes to policing, particularly with regard to ICE, after ICE had killed 2 American citizens on American soil. So there's a bit of a standoff there. We've heard a lot about long lines for example, at airports and passengers, having to get there earlier in order to be able to board their flights. But it would seem that there is um, high workload and fatigue levels of the individuals on duty at the air traffic control units because there has been some understaffing of some FAA air traffic control facilities and training programs noted in recent years, exacerbated by demographic trends and not infrequent government shutdowns. Um, so, yes, there happens to be something of that kind going on here. So we'll see if there's a direct relation to this accident over time. Greg Feith, a former senior investigator at the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, said the agency will look at a wide range of factors that were at play late Sunday night at LaGuardia Airport leading to the collision, and that the Federal Aviation Administration said took place at 11:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Among the main questions, Feith told CBC News would be whether the air traffic controller lost, quote, situational awareness with the Air Canada flight when he gave the go-ahead to a fire truck to navigate runway 4 before frantically telling the truck to stop. Precisely when the Air Canada Express CRJ 900 plane had clearance to land, if in fact it received clearance, will also be critical to know, Feith said. The airport fire trucks are stout vehicles typically painted yellow to enhance visibility, but investigators will also note the weather conditions as it rained Sunday night in the area. And of course, then they will be looking at air traffic control staffing levels as well. So yeah, about 1 hour ago, it was indicated that about 540 flights had been canceled at the airport so far today, according to the tracking website FlightAware, as a result of this. So yeah, according to Reuters, it says that the aircraft hit the fire vehicle, which was traveling at about 39 kilometers an hour at the time, according to Flight Radar 24. There is a passenger, Jack Cabot, who gave his account of what was going on and said, we went down for a regular landing. We came in pretty hard. We immediately hit something and it was just chaos in there. About 5 seconds later, we had come to a stop, but in that short period, I mean, everybody was hunkered down and everybody was screaming pretty quickly. We didn't have any directions because the pilot's cabin had been kind of destroyed. So somebody said, let's get the emergency exit and get the door and let's all just jump out. And that's exactly what we did. Don't know if the Canadian National Transportation Safety Board will be involved in some way, given that it has involved a Canadian plane. And of course, some people are wondering with the cuts and the United States' rather antagonistic position towards us, whether or not the Transportation Safety Board in the United States will be doing as thorough an investigation or yield results that are as honest as they should be. I personally would be a little less worried about that because national transportation safety boards usually have a very good reputation. And if Canada is involved, Canada's in particular is one of the best in the world. Um, so we'd have to see how much involvement there is, but that's not something I would have as a primary concern at the moment until, unless we get evidence of something different, of course, as things progress. But I wouldn't place too much fear there for the moment. But yeah, terrible tragedy there happening, and something that seems to have been rather avoidable. Also, kids and cubs, there is some lots of changes over the course of the weekend with what's been going on in Iran. I highly recommend you listening to Kit Hughes' statements on that if you have an opportunity. Hugh of the Borg, I believe, is his podcast. And you can find that on YouTube as well. I will see if I can get a link for you on that as well, Kits and Cubs, and be able to share that with you. But yeah, things have changed in a rather drastic way over the course of the weekend, and it looks like uh, supply shocks specifically um, when it comes to gas might be here and be here for a while. If some of the things that, well, including some of the things that have happened, but if some of the things that seem to be talked about actually do happen. And yes, we definitely do not want that, but we could potentially be, I don't want to say beyond a point of no return, um, but yeah, decisions are might be made at the moment that are more difficult for people to backtrack or reverse or dig themselves out from under at the moment. And we might be in this for the long haul for a bit. I just included the Hugh of the Borg uh, YouTube page link here in the chat. Um, if you have investments, you've seen them do very well for a very while, for a decent while, and then quite a tumble over the last little bit. Price of gold, in particular, which had been sky high, and is still relatively high, historically speaking, um, has taken quite a tumble over the past few days. It's down 13% over the last 30 days, specifically. Um, and I think it's gone down from just over $5,000 an ounce 7 days ago to $4,372 an ounce. Which is a big adjustment, and would have, are a little confused by that because as the world is getting gold still be increasing, but it seems that the value of the American reason in the context of all of this has been rising, which has been decreasing the price of gold. I'm not exactly sure why. My knowledge of economics and international trade markets is not strong enough for me to be able to understand why it is at the moment that the US dollar would be getting stronger as it seems to be engaging in some folly. Uh, Price of crude and Brent is also a bit down for the day. Crude is down at the presently 6.5% for the day, and Brent down just over 7.2% for the day. They are still up 43.7% and 59% respectively for the year. But again, with more of these things being threatened, um, again, not sure exactly why it is that the price seems to be adjusting lower for the moment. It would seem, according to Kit Uncover, uh, in the opening of the chat today, saying that oil futures fall after Trump's Iran announcement, and it seems that Trump tacoed himself on the threat that he issued, I think it was on Friday, to attack all of the power plants, or as many power plants as possible. It seems that there's a 5-day pause on that. And it seems that Trump has ordered the Pentagon to halt strikes against Iran energy infrastructure for 5 days amid, quote, productive conversations about ending the fighting until diplomatic meetings completed this week. And it would seem that, again, according to Kit Uncover, Netanyahu disagrees with what Trump is doing, a source said, and was frustrated by the decision to halt U.S. attacks on Iranian energy infrastructure and power plants. So there seems to be a little confusion here between um, the two main belligerents here. According to Kid Uncover, again, I'm not sure which news sources these are coming from specifically. I have no doubt that they are reputable news sources considering the quality of Kid Uncover's work, but I can't tell you specifically what news sources here are giving this information. It says that Iran's foreign ministry says that there are no talks with Washington and accuses of buying time while regional de escalation efforts go on. Okay. And then, of course, there's some stuff happening in Russia as well as a result. Iranian state media says here that there is no direct quote, there's no direct contact with Trump, not even through intermediaries. Trump retreated after hearing that our targets would be all power plants in West Asia. So, and I guess that um, how to put it, I guess that the Trump administration may be giving a bit more credence to Iranian threats and what Iranians claim their capabilities are, considering what's been going on. I mean, we about 7 days into this, when we got to the first week, we moved into the dynamics changed from who can dish out the most to who can take the most. And it seems that the Iranians are able to take a lot of pain, administer a lot of it too, it seems, asymmetrically, of course, but are able to take a lot of pain and are uh, maybe being a lot more strategic about the way that they are executing their defense against the combined Israel and U.S. assault, and might have been a little more clever than perhaps the two main belligerents um, had planned for, let's say. Oh boy. All right. So yeah, let's see here. Uncover oil prices fell by more than 13% after Trump said he would order the military to postpone any strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. Um, just taking a look here. Kit Hugh says here the U.S. air industry is in advanced collapse. I'd pick Aeroflot at this point over a U.S. carrier. Yikes. Okay. Uh, that is not a vote of confidence in any way, shape, or form. Um, all right. And Kit Hugh here at the end of it saying, if we got off oil, this wouldn't be a problem. And indeed, Kit Chris here saying here, we are living through the battle between fossil fuels economy and renewable energy and electrification that is going everywhere outside of North America. And that was one of the things that struck me because, you know, you keep on hearing everybody, particularly on the conservative side, see, this is why we need more pipelines. This is why we need more pipelines. We should have more pipelines. That way we could be supplying our friends. And I'm thinking, isn't this an argument for why we need more renewables? Specifically, that people can go after energy infrastructure in this way and blockades and all that kind of stuff. Isn't this the perfect argument for really doubling, tripling, quadrupling, quintupling, octupling down on renewables and battery storage? So that when some madman decides to go to start World War III for oil, that we can laugh in Canadian or laugh in renewables and not be as affected. I mean, we're still going to be affected because, you know, sulfur, helium, fertilizers, aluminium, sorry, all of that stuff, and whatever else comes from that region in relatively large quantities that the world needs, and that might be obstructed due to shipping flows. But yes, it does seem to me that this would be an absolutely wonderful time to say that we are going way more all in on renewables than we have been. Oh boy. Wow. Kitlinda M here says Iran released a video yesterday purportedly showing stockpiles of weapons underground, looking like missiles, rockets, and drones, with some being loaded on a truck and leaving the facility at the end. Yeah. Indeed. We might have to have Kit Hugh back on for another discussion, given that we are now entering the fourth week and things have changed materially since we had our first discussion. So, my friend, if you would like to come back on the show and find a time, just give us a little heads up and we can do a where we are now kind of episode. But yeah, it is. Um, it's looking like uh, the Trump administration may be trying to find some ways to do some outreach, and that the Iranians specifically are just simply not taking the call. Or if there is someone taking the call, it's one of those back channel things that keeps some conversation going between two warring nations. But, there hasn't I mean, we still haven't seen the new Ayatollah yet. There's been a couple of statements that we've heard that he's allegedly made, but, we haven't even seen the new Ayatollah, so I'm not exactly sure, what the point person is within the updated, regime structure, with whom, the Americans would talk at this moment. But, yeah, things are getting, um I don't want to say that things are getting out of hand. They were out of hand for quite a while ago, but it would appear that we have two people who are hell bent on bringing us down a path where the primary concern in real life may not actually be, um, well, definitely not us, and probably not even the threat or the Iranians, but some other objective. Uh, we both know that Netanyahu and Trump both want to keep their butts out of jail. That's one. Um, but there may not all objectives that are publicly stated in a situation like this are necessarily the full slate of objectives that people are trying to reach with a certain intervention. But it seems to be I'm getting the overall sense, particularly from the United States side, maybe not so much from Israel's side. Um, Israel seems to have a plan, and they seem to be executing it and taking advantage of both the United States' willingness to be an accomplice here, and coupled with the relative state of utter chaos and disorganization within the United States administration itself, to be using as a free hall pass to do whatever it wants, is the impression. And on the United States side, um, either this is 100% purely ego driven, and we don't know what could be said or done to appeal to Donald Trump's sense of self survival, to want to put an end to this, or that the President of the United States is somehow compromised. And even if he wanted to get out, he can't now because he's just in too deep and they won't let him go. One or the other. Um, and we know, of course, with Trump, uh, even if an off ramp was handed to him on a gold plated platter, he would not take it if it meant that he had to admit he made a mistake or did something wrong or miscalculated. It has to be absolutely something that he can do that can make him claim, hey, I won. So I don't know, maybe he has to conquer an island somewhere or something, uh, or completely destroy something in one small part and have proof of it to point to that and say, mission accomplished, I won, now we're leaving. And, now that I've got all of you fighting out there, you guys um, figure it out. But when you look at what's going on um, in Lebanon in particular, there seems to be maybe an attempt for a certain Gazification of Lebanon. If we look at the number of people who are displaced both in Lebanon and Iran at the moment, if we look at the increased activities of settlers if we if we look at things like certain rockets entering the airspace of Turkey, if we look at what's going on at I think it is Diego Garcia base that is I think operated by Great Britain. Um, this seems to be broadening more than it seems to be on the path to some type of uh, ceasefire. Might be a lot to ask for at this moment, but a path to getting to a point where we're not dropping bombs anymore, and maybe looking at an opportunity for the world to get the shipping lanes and everything back in order and energy flows back in order. But like I said, even if this stopped today, like even if I announced to you in 10 minutes from now that all hostilities have stopped and they've agreed, it's going to be months and months and months to work through just the energy things, the fertilizer things. We are getting very, very dangerous close to decisions that have to be made for planting season. And the world's farmers, well, at least let's say farmers in our region, at least, if not the entire world's farmers, um, are not entirely sure yet what it is that they should be planting, given the levels of fertilizer that are available and that may be taken offline. So again, um, you know, if you're looking in the United States, some farmers that are trying to decide whether or not they're going to be planting corn or soybeans, and let's say they opt not for corn for soybeans instead, um, considering everything that's going on with China and the United States, even if they grew soybeans this year, to where are they selling them and for how much? Um, there are lots of knock-on effects as this goes on, and the effects that appear down the line. So I'm, yeah, I'm not, uh, I'm not my usual optimistic self when it comes to this. Um, but yeah, get Hugh going. Corn will be very expensive this year. That does not surprise me. That does not surprise me whatsoever. But yes, and that's the other thing here. Kit Jinx here says, and I talked about this online a bit. Japan is about to sell U.S. debt, and yeah, that was the other thing that I was wondering about the stock markets and all that kind of stuff. If Japan, particularly after that lovely interaction that they just had. Oh boy, when Prime Minister Takaichi went to the United States. Now, there's some people in Japan a little upset as well because, she hugged him and all that kind of stuff. But that awful office moment where I guess Trump thought he was being a little clever and said that, well, Japan sure knows a lot about surprises. Right? He attacked Iran in this way because, they wanted the element of surprise, and, well, surely Japan knows a lot about surprises, right? I mean, remember Pearl Harbor? How Japan surprised the US with her Pearl Harbor, then Trump going like, "Why didn't you guys tell me about Pearl Harbor?" Even though Trump was born 5 years after Pearl Harbor happened. Yes, 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 because, Japan would have called you while you weren't even a twinkle in your father's eye to let you know that they were about to bomb Pearl Harbor because you're just that important, aren't you, Donald? The narcissism. Oh my god. And, you could see, the Prime Minister of Japan's eyes, the now infamous video clip where she's, sitting there and her eyes are sort of darting, a couple places, and her lips are kind of, mm, come in like that. And, well, anybody who has been caught, against their will in a very awfully awkward situation like that, um, I remember once being in a ride share where um, there were some very interesting things being said about black people, with them not knowing that they had somebody partially black in the back. And they're sort of like, do I say something right now? Or do I make sure that I get home? um, so yeah, that very uncomfortable feeling. Anybody who's been in a situation like that recognizes that look. That, oh my god, what the fuck is actually going on here? Is this shit real? And when will this fucking end? Ah. So, um, uh, I felt for the Prime Minister of Japan in that moment. Let's just say, really felt for her. Um, so yeah, that led me to think. If Japan decides to sell a couple $100 billion in either U.S. debt or bonds or something like that. That could change a lot all of a sudden. And Japan is not a country that is adverse to doing that type of thing, I would assume, um, particularly on a matter of honor. So I would not be surprised. It would not surprise me at all if we heard an announcement at some point. Maybe not immediately after this, so that there could be some distance, we have a little plausible deniability. But I would not be surprised or shocked if we heard over the course of the next month or so that Japan was deciding to divest itself of some U.S. debt, a significant portion of U.S. debt, significant portion enough to pick up a few international headlines. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Oh boy. Jeez. All right. But the thing we came here to talk about today, Kids and Cubs, I'm not sure if you took the time to watch it. I did, so that you don't have to. You're welcome. My sacrifice was immense. Please send money. I need copious amounts of hot chocolate. But I did watch the Pierre Poilievre interview with Joe Rogan. Now, I will be completely honest. I have never watched a Joe Rogan experience show before. I don't necessarily intend to again after this. Um, my familiarity with Joe Rogan was with him as a cast member, I think, of a sitcom called News Radio, I think it was, and then the first few seasons of Fear Factor. And after that, kind of disappeared off my radar. Um, this is significant because it is the largest audience for which Pierre Poilievre has ever, and I'm going to say the word performed here, um, as a politician. Because, and I say that because I do not believe that there's much authentically genuine about Pierre Poilievre except his ability to be a dick. Because he can't fake that for 20 something years. That's definitely who he is. But this was his big moment. This was the biggest stage he's ever been on internationally. So it would be interesting, of course, just out of pure curiosity, to see how he acquitted himself in that moment. Uh, so very significant because of that. Significant also because this is something that a lot of people had been encouraging him to do when he was 20 something points up. And he decided to not do at the time because it was deemed, um, not advisable. Uh, at that time, It is important to note that it would seem that Joe Rogan was much more in Trump's camp than he is today, and that Pierre Poilievre was already having the trouble of being associated with Trump, especially since he had gotten the endorsements of people such as Elon Musk, which clearly did not help him at the time that he received it. Um, so he wanted to stay away. We read in our article about that. I think it was Mickey Jurich about Poilievre's trip to the United States and him not having done Rogan the first time, and him not really having many contacts in the United States, and his campaign being somewhat insular, and that the bigger players in the United States see him as a loser who had done that apple munching video at some point, and that's all they knew about him. Given the situation now where he is, 20 something points behind in the polls instead, personally, his party is about 10% back. Based on the polling aggregators, there's some polls showing that his party is much further behind than that. But given that it's looking like Mark Carney will have a majority following the by-elections, that we will not have an early election. Um, well, the context is a little different for Pierre now, right? And so he's decided to go on the show. It's not as risky anymore, I guess, for him, or he just needs the boost, right? If somebody's going to appear on the world's biggest podcast, and it is deemed to be an audience that would be friendly or receptive to someone of Pierre's political leanings, that is going to be news, no matter what, right? So it gives them an opportunity to be in the press. And as I had mentioned last year, I found it really interesting that Pierre, even though he had a whole week to himself to try to dominate the headlines, given that Mark Carney was on vacation, was not doing a particularly good job of it and wasn't really seizing the moment. Uh, we had his he went to the United States and then came back to Windsor to do an auto-packed speech, and that speech got some attention, but he did that on this side of the border. Then he went back to the United States, to Texas for a few days, where he met with Governor Abbott, a man who was very, very notable for not supporting women's right to equal choice, and then met with AG, I think he might still be the AG, Paxton, who has a very interesting history in terms of investigations and potential impropriety and that type of stuff. And I think he was in the runoff against Senator John Cornyn, and that one was not resolved in the primary, and it seems that they have to have a runoff between them two because nobody got 50%, so there will be more money spent there. But he met with him. So one person who doesn't stand for certain values that the majority of Canadians stand, and the other one who's had several investigations and run-ins with the law, even though they are the Attorney General. Not the best quality people. And we didn't hear a lot of news about that, about his time in Texas. And one of the reasons for that is that there is a Canadian child, I believe an autistic child, who is 7 years old, who is being held at a Texas immigration facility. According to Akshay Kulkarni, of CBC News, Family and friends are expressing fears for Penticton, BC woman and her daughter, who've been detained by U.S. authorities in Texas and are currently in an immigration holding facility. Tanya Warner, a 47-year-old whose family says is legally in the United States on a worker's visa, and her Ayla Lucas were stopped at a U.S. border checkpoint on their way back from a baby shower. Ayla, 7, has autism, leading to fears from loved ones that border detention could be disturbing for her. Husband Edward Warner lives with Tanya and Isla in Kingsville, Texas. The two were on their way back from a baby shower in Raymondville on Saturday and had to stop at a mandatory border checkpoint in Sarita, Texas. It was something they had done before without any issues at the checkpoint, which is located inside the U.S. and not at an international border. But this time, Edward said his wife and stepdaughter were detained. They are among dozens of Canadians who have been detained by U.S. immigration authorities, whose tactics as part of an ongoing immigration crackdown across the U.S. have faced criticism over alleged human rights abuses. Quote, a little freaked out. It's definitely traumatizing for a 7-year-old, Edward told CBC News on Tuesday. Very not happy being there. I wouldn't be either. My wife's having anxiety attacks and all sorts of problems, he added. Tanya and Isla were held at the Ursula Detention Center, the largest U.S. Customs and Border Protection detention center, for 6 days. They have since been moved to the Dilley facility and are still together, said family friend Marino Munoz, whose baby shower the two were returning from. Munoz said the Dilley Immigration Processing Center is considered more family friendly, and he hopes communication with Tanya and Isla will be easier. Quote, our hope now is that they will be able to get them the paperwork to work on getting them out. Sorry. Our hope now is that they will be able to get them the paperwork to work on getting them out, said Munoz. CBC News reached out to U.S. federal authorities for the story, but did not immediately hear back before publication. Gee, I wonder why. A spokesperson for the Global Affairs Canada said it was aware of multiple cases of Canadians currently or previously in immigration-related detention in the U.S., and consular officials would provide assistance as required by international law. Quote, consular officials advocate for Canadian citizens abroad and raise concerns about justified and serious complaints of ill treatment or discrimination with the local authorities, but cannot exempt Canadians from local legal processes, the spokesperson wrote. Due to privacy considerations, no further information can be disclosed. Tanya has been living in the United States for about 5 years, Munoz told CBC News. He said Tanya and Isla initially moved to Texas on a visitor visa to be with Edward. About 3 years ago, Tanya and Edward got married, and she later obtained a worker's visa. I know she's got legal working status, so we were completely caught off guard by them her taking her in, said Munoz. Democratic Texas Congressman Vicente Gonzalez said in a statement that his office is in contact with the Warner family. Gonzalez said Tanya has a valid work permit and should not be in detention, and is calling for her and Isla's immediate release. Quote, we must bring them home and reunite yet another family being ripped apart by this administration's rogue immigration enforcement operation, said Gonzalez. Munoz said just hours before their detainment on Saturday, Isla had been playing with his niece and goddaughter at the baby shower. Quote, to go from having a great day to be literally in jail like locked up detained for a 7-year-old, any 7-year-old, that's insane, he said. Munoz said U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement agents in the region had been, quote, raiding work camps and neighborhoods and detaining people left and right, but this was the first person he was connected to directly that was being detained. The agency, which U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has said is targeting violent criminals as part of a deportation push, has faced criticism on multiple fronts. That includes not-profits expressing concerns over conditions at detention facilities and ICE's arresting tactics themselves. The criticism was only heightened during a recent immigration crackdown in Minnesota, in which federal agents fatally shot 2 American citizens, leading to widespread protest over ICE actions. Munoz and Edward both said they reached out to their local congressperson in Texas for help, but Tanya needs to provide her signature for assistance to be rendered, which is difficult when she's in detention. Quote, to do this to a child is just ridiculous, and to be as unhelpful as they are. The system is just designed to be cruel to people right now, and they don't want to do anything to make it better, Munoz said. There seems to be no evidence whatsoever that Pierre Poilievre raised the issue of Canadians in detention and the issue of this BC woman and 7-year-old suspected to be in one of these camps in Texas. Maybe he didn't want to draw too much attention to that. Maybe that's why we didn't hear that much about him while he was in Texas. He delivered a speech at some point, which I've not listened to yet, about his view of Canada and U.S. trade relationship. I'm going to guess that it is very similar to the one that I did watch before he left, which has been aptly described by a lot of people as him having taken a collection of Carney's speeches and the best moments from them, particularly the Davos one, having passed it through a chat GPT thesaurus for how could I say the same words, the same thing, but with different words that makes it like sound like these were my ideas rather than someone else's ideas. Like I've come up with a plan for something. And uh, after rehearsing that speech a couple of times, he must have had thesaurus neck, thesaurus throat ever. Get it? A little play on words there. But yes, broke out the whole thesaurus and plagiarized a lot of the things that Mark Carney said. However, the central thesis, it would appear from Pierre Poilievre's um, speeches of this nature, are that Mark Carney is wrong to view what is happening as being some permanent rupture from which we will never recover, and that we should always remember that the United States is our biggest and best trading partner and always will be, and that we should deal with them and not like it's a rupture, but I guess just a difficult moment that we need to get through. Um, Problem is with that thinking that Donald Trump is still going to be president for the better part of the next 3 years, even though he seems to be entering his extra lame duck à l'orange status. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, uh, um, but he's there for a while, and of course, uh, assuming he lives long enough, um, probably still has designs on that third term somehow, or may not be any more inclined, whether he is allowed to run in the next election or not, uh, would probably not be inclined to let go of that president's seat. So I'm sure there's still a few more surprises that he has up his sleeve if he is, um, if the fates allow him to complete his term. If his life expectancy should be such that he can terminate this term. Um, I'm not particularly banking on him going quietly into the good night. Put it that way, at least politically speaking. So a lot of damage can be caused in those 3 years. I mean, just look at the damage that he's caused in one. Look at the damage he's caused in one to his own nation, let alone others. Um, Even if we were to indulge, Pierre, on that theory that we shouldn't be rushing to make all these deals with China and India and all this kind of stuff because, uh, uh, the president will change at some point, and the United States will come back around. And then we'll be able to get back to regularly scheduled programming. There's no guarantee on that. There's no guarantee that Trumpism in some twisted and new and improved form it doesn't continue on after Trump himself is gone, right? That attitude, or that poisoned attitude, there's no guarantee that that disappears the second that Trump does. That somebody else won't want to take the mantle and run with it. Particularly somebody that might be very invested in that continuing, considering all the gains that they've got under Trump and are not particularly ready to let that go. So we have a Pierre. Oh, it seems I am fuzzy. We have a Pierre Poilievre situation here, uh, where uh, his strategy for the future relies a lot on hope. Hope that the United States will one day, relatively soon, be a nation with which we can have grown up and adult discussions and reason based discussions on trade and security and stuff of the like. And as I mentioned, I think on Friday, when reading some statements uh, from people in the financial community with regard to interest rates and the future of the economy, hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. So Pierre has claimed that uh, he was going on Joe Rogan to fight for Canadian jobs and Canadian workers. I laughed. I found that pretty hard to believe because, I mean, he doesn't even fight for that here. I mean, let's be kidding. Um, but wanting to give the benefit of the doubt. I did listen to it, and I listened in good faith. And Kits and Cubs, I have to say, and you might want to sit down for this, um, it wasn't as horrible as I expected. In fact, for the most part, he acquitted himself relatively well of the opportunity. And I'm going to put a big asterisk next to that, and I will explain that as we go on. Um, he wasn't the dickish Pierre that we've come to know him to be. He's gotten a lot of praise for not being the dickish Pierre we have come to know him to be. He passed on a few opportunities to take some cheap shots, which is not what we know to be true of Pierre. But he did pass the opportunities, and on people again looking at this. Oh, yeah, he showed some statesmanship. Maybe this is the turn that we've been waiting for. Yeah, for 22 years, and blah blah blah. Listen, this is not a turn. All right, he's got a 22-year track record. One or two good performances here or there interspersed is not a turn. I'll believe that there's a turn when it is consistent and it lasts. But on an occasion where he was talking to a primarily American audience about the relationship between Canada and the United States and had an opportunity to indulge in certain conspiracy theories or to go as far as he's gone on Canadian soil, he passed on all of those opportunities, thus giving him the air of more statesmanship. He didn't have to make those decisions, but he did. So he does get some points for that. But I would not give him a cookie for doing the thing that would be reasonably expected of anybody going to such a show on foreign soil, not criticizing the prime minister of your own country on foreign soil, and not feeding into conspiracy theories. There's a couple of other sort of conspiratorial moments that were sort of brought along that Pierre sort of like just let pass by. He didn't actually feed them all that much, but he didn't do much to dispel them either. There was one about Maid in particular that was a little interesting. But we'll show you a couple of excerpts here and there. Sorry for those of you who don't want to watch Pierre. And one of the reasons that I put some asterisks in here is that while Pierre did not do himself a disservice, and there's actually one particular moment that I'm going to present where he actually uh, did rather well, particularly when it comes to what his stated goals were. But he had 2 hours and 20 something minutes, I believe, with Joe Rogan. Here I have 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 39 seconds. And if he was there to do the things he said he was there to do, there were some moments where he did do that, but he certainly did not maximize the time with that. So the first moment I'm going to bring you is right off the bat, right off the top. Pierre comes in. It's about 2 minutes, and I'm bringing this to you because one, there's a first lie here from Pierre, two, but there's also a foreshadowing of what his strategy was going to be for this, because as you know, we do long form interviews and conversations here on our show, and one of the beautiful things about long form is because people don't have to do politics and sound bites. They can do politics in full sentences, and after a while in a conversation, there's a comfort that sets in, and people sometimes open up more, and you get to see different sides of them, or you get to get more of an appreciation of at least for their thought process. Um, but that works best when the person with whom you're with maximizes the time to share their points of view on things. And that did not happen during this conversation. So let's start with the beginning. It's a very good place to start. This is right off the bat, about the first 2 minutes.
How are you, sir? Pleasure to meet you. It's great to be.
It seems that my playback speed is too fast. Let's go. So right here, we're going to stop because we do not leave Canada during election campaigns. It is not the reason. He did not go on Joe Rogan the first time. This is a lie in a revised history. Now, it is custom normally. We don't leave Canada during elections, but that's not true because we just saw Doug Ford do it in the last provincial election, right, in Ontario. And sometimes there are big meetings and stuff like that happen during an election campaign, and the prime minister does have to go and attend or whatnot. But usually, there are special dispensations because during an election we have a caretaker government, right? So Pierre Poilievre just simply telling Joe Rogan to his face, well, I couldn't come because there was an election going on and we don't leave. That was not what was said at the time. At the time, the words that were used seemed to indicate that it could be problematic for Pierre Poilievre to appear on Joe Rogan's podcast, particularly at the time when Rogan was saying more things that are complimentary about Trump than he is today, and getting the endorsement of people like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and Alex, what's his name there, who denied the Cindy Hook stuff, was maybe serving him with his base, but not serving him for being the broad tent guy that needed enough votes to actually win. So the first little thing, but then you see like this, where we were trying to get you back to Canada, and this is the first part of Pierre's strategy here to get through the 2 hours and 23 minutes or so of Joe Rogan. All right. So part of the Pierre Poilievre strategy for the Pierre Poilievre experience that he wanted to give Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan experience was a lot of sucking up. Lots of sucking up. Lots and lots and lots of sucking up. We need to get you to come to Canada because it will do a lot for our tourism. How? How will Joe Rogan come into Canada do a lot for tourism in Canada? No. Just blowing sunshine up the butt. I got a gift for you, and here the quote from your favorite martial artist, and the spaceship and the logo of your show and all this kind of stuff. Just some impressive sucking up, and then the second part of the strategy is you will notice at one point he turned around and said, this thing you said, it was on your 13th UFC thing, the 12th. Oh yeah, 12th. Pierre is opening this up right away with a gift, some sucking up, Pierre asking Joe Rogan a question rather than taking a question from Joe Rogan. And this continued a lot throughout the show. There are various moments throughout the show where Pierre Poilievre kept on, they're talking about the UFC and or mixed martial arts, and they're talking about legendary Canadian kickboxer Jean-Yves Thériault, and Pierre's, oh, well, yeah, he's a friend of mine. I know him. Or, they're talking about such and such a person. Oh, I know them. Or talking about something. Oh, we'll have to send you some maple syrup. Or, well, oh, yeah, we'll have to get you up there for this. Or, yeah, we'll have to invite you for that. Lots of sucking up. Tons of sucking up. There were also a couple of moments during the interview where he did that thing that he did at the beginning, revise history a little bit. There were times when they were talking about certain policies that Joe Rogan was talking about, and saying that these were matters of personal choice, and that Pierre would agree with him that they are matters of personal choice. But if we look at Pierre's voting record on these things, they were things that Pierre did not want us to have the personal choice to exercise. Which gives you an indication right there and there why it is he would have been a terrible person to send into the negotiating room, because Pierre, it would appear, really wants to be liked, and wants to be liked so much that the manner in which he alters his message for the person in front of whom he is. And I'm not saying that this is a criticism specifically, because we all do that, right? How much we are willing to say and how we are willing to frame things depending on who it is that we are talking to at the moment, right? We all make choices with regard to that. But to sit there in front of someone for example, who is pro marijuana, and you are talking about marijuana, as it happened during this discussion, and then claiming, yes, well, it is personal choice, when you voted against people having that choice, and you say that you believe it's a matter of personal choice. Um, that's not honest. Pierre does not believe that smoking marijuana is a matter of personal choice. He does not believe that accessing MAID is a question of personal choice. But sitting in front of someone who's a little bit more libertarian on certain things, Pierre converses with him as if Pierre believes that it is a matter of personal choice. So slightly fraudulently representing himself to Joe Rogan, again, in an effort to suck up or mirror mirroring him. It's a technique that people do when they want to ingratiate themselves, is that they will mirror. They will either repeat some of the things they say, or agree with some of their opinions, or repeat one of their actions. Like somebody will, turn around and adjust their shirt or whatnot, and a couple seconds later, you'll see someone adjusting their shirt, mirroring. And that's a way that people, a technique that people use to ingratiate themselves. They let the person they're talking to see themselves in them, and therefore might get softer questions as a result, or might have somebody that's interviewing less willing to turn around. But hey, but wait a minute, isn't this the case? And just keep the conversation flowing on a more sort of friendly vibe. A longer form interview does allow for the better opportunity to do that than a shorter form, of course. But yes, there were a couple of moments here that were a little disingenuous from Pierre. If you are from Canada and watching and know Pierre's history, it's like, this guy doesn't believe that. So yeah, a certain amount of sucking up. A lot of it. The only thing he didn't do as a suck up was, suggest that he could introduce Joe Rogan to Jean-Yves Thériault, for example, if they had not met, or something like that, or any of the martial arts people that Pierre claims to know. It would also seem that this interview came about, according to Pierre at least, as a result of a common connection they both share with mixed martial arts champion per extraordinaire, Georges St. Pierre. who had incredibly uh, long amount of time at the top of his field, and was world renowned and world famous for his skills, probably known as one of the best fighters ever produced, and was Canadian. So it would seem that that's how that this conversation came about, sort of a common connection that they had. So Pierre certainly couldn't have offered to introduce him to GSP, of course, because well, Joe and GSP already knew each other. But pretty much everything else, there's, oh, we got to get you some of that, or we got to get you to come, or we got you to, or there was always some sucking up, a lot of sucking up. And the other thing, you know, like I said, this interview was about 2 hours and 22 minutes. But after about the 1 hour mark, there was very little of interest. If you were interested in politics, there was very little of interest if you wanted to see how Pierre was going to uh, defend workers and promote tariff-free trade with the United States. Again, um, to an American audience, mostly. Rogan has a very sizable Canadian audience as well. It's one of the most popular listened to podcasts of a political nature in Canada. Uh, probably has a large global audience. So there's value in what Pierre is doing here, in the sense of talking to a bunch of people who'll be watching, talking to Joe Rogan with an audience of a bunch of people who may be Trump supportive, who may have been hearing all the rhetoric about how Canada is evil and nasty and taking advantage of the United States. We see some public opinion polling in the United States seeming to indicate that, at least in the United States, Americans' perceptions of Canadians seems to be dropping. Oddly enough, among Democrats, are the view of Canadians seems to be improving, and it was already really, really good to start with. But with some Republicans, it is dropping. The whole process of Ukrainization of Canada, in terms of first building the narrative within the United States about why it is that Canada is such a terrible, terrible country, to eventually lay the case for, well, we have to protect the Americans who are living there, who must be completely, in danger now that Canada has completely gone loopy and crazy. Um, we need to intervene. That is, we are declining in the esteem of those voters. So there's a bit of a drop off in how Canadians are perceived in the United States. Um, these people that in the general public are more inclined or more predisposed to listen to in a venue, in a forum that they are very much inclined to take in, Joe Rogan, where if the person from Canada uh, is delivering some messages that can be constructive and helpful about the situation, uh, that can have some very important value. And Pierre did do that on this in this podcast. So you have to give him credit where it's due. He did not screw that part up. Um, but also, uh, I'm not for giving cookies to people who just do the minimum thing that was expected. We would expect a leader of a loyal opposition, when they went to another country to speak to a mainly foreign audience about the relationship between the members, uh, the relationship between their country and ours, to do so in a way that reflects Canada positively and that does not bring our internal fights onto foreign soil. That's literally the job. So he did his job with some degree of competence. That does not a statesman make. That does not a pivot make. but it also um, was far from as bad as it could have been if Pierre had gone there and been the Pierre that we know him to be here. So I'm actually saying it. It actually was helpful. And it may actually have generated some benefit. But he didn't maximize the opportunity. One of the moments, you might have seen this already on the various clips, was the moment where, and this is fairly early on, it's about 7 minutes 50 in the podcast. So very early on, Joe Rogan tries to come in with a conspiracy theory that to get Pierre to see if he will take a bite at this. Pierre is talking about certain books that he has been reading, books he has read lately or that he has read in the past, and he talks. I think he talks about a biography of Fidel Castro, which allows Joe Rogan the opportunity to come in. Theory that Fidel Castro was Justin Trudeau's dad, even though Margaret Trudeau never met Fidel Castro until several years, I think, after Justin was already born or something the like. But anyway, let's go into this here. Interesting revealing moment here because, well, Joe Rogan kind of reveals in that exchange that he too is quite aware that it is a conspiracy theory, and it sure would be great if it were true. Now Pierre laughs it off and rushes, but does set the record straight. And then takes takes the moment to pivot immediately to why it is he had issues with Trudeau father. Uh, Deftly handled. Not sure I would have laughed as much personally if I was doing that. But again, we're trying to create a convivial atmosphere, so that can be forgiven or looked past here in this situation. But really early on, this gave him the opportunity, even though Rogan seems to know that it is not true. But gave Pierre the opportunity anyway, and Pierre chose not to bite. The next moment I want to bring to you here is when they get into the subject of maid. And again, this is fairly early on. Again, we're talking about around 12 minutes in. The cut here might not be perfectly timed to lead into this conversation here. But there's only going to be maybe a couple of seconds of extra stuff before we get into the subject here. I just can't seem to get to the timer to stop on the exact timestamp I want. But let's take a little conversation, a little listen to this part of the conversation here. All right. And here we go.
There's just so many things that concern
Hope once again. And you will notice here that Pierre engages here with the conspiracy theory that in Canada, a kid, I don't know how old the kid is supposed to be based on the reference from Joe Rogan in this, did receive maid specifically and only for the cause of seasonal affective disorder. I have a problem with that because I am pretty sure, just as is the case, that nobody is receiving sexual reassignment surgery under the age of 18, as many conservatives like for us to believe. There is nobody being given or being granted access to MAID for having seasonal affective disorder on its own. An account on Twitter at Flavio Ivan, FLAVIOEVAN, that I highly recommend because he's does a lot of great fact checks here, deals with the question of 1 in 20 deaths in Canada being assisted suicide. Claim here says that Rogan cites the 1 in 20 stat and claims that a young Canadian got it for seasonal depression. Poilievre validates this, warning that MAID shouldn't be, quote, offered to kids or people whose only condition is mental illness. The implication here, they are framing the statistic as a dystopian reality where the Canadian government is actively euthanizing physically healthy, depressed youth instead of offering them help. And this was confirmed and the latter part of that exchange where Joe Rogan talks about, well, when you have an organization, then the organization seeks to perpetuate itself and increase business for itself, and therefore recommends that more and more people be euthanized in order to keep itself in business. And this is modeled this line of thinking is modeled over for example, the United States private incarceration system, where at one point there's only so many criminals, and if you want to keep the bodies in the jails and the jails full, well, then you have to find new ways to turn people into criminals. And when they talk about in the United States, the school to prison pipeline for those private jails, there is no organization with a profit motive in Canada that takes care of MAID. It's law. It's a change in the law that we're allowing people to have the choice. And you will notice in that answer, at the beginning of the answer, Pierre says he believes it's a matter of choice, even though he voted against people having that choice. And he repeats in the answer a second time that he believes it's a matter of choice because Joe Rogan states that he's not completely opposed to it. He believes that there is a place for it, but it needs to be constrained, which is what we have. So Pierre mirrors him and tries to present himself as someone who shares that belief with Rogan that it should be open in certain cases. But Pierre does not believe that because he voted against it. Now, the reality is, yes, that the math is right. According to Health Canada's 6th annual report, there were 16,499 MAID provisions in 2024, representing 5.1% of all deaths in the country. So yes, roughly 1 in 20 deaths in Canada is an assisted suicide. But there is a big but. When you look at the actual data, the demographic driving this number is entirely different from what Poilievre and Rogan are suggesting. Terminal illness. Over 95% of MAID provisions were track 1 cases, meaning the person's natural death was already reasonably foreseeable. We have an aging population. I believe that we have more natural deaths in Canada than natural births. And every year, especially if we're not for immigration. Cancer, not depression. Cancer was the most frequently cited condition, affecting more than 63% of MAID recipients, and the median age of recipient was 77.9 years old. Mental illness is legally excluded. Anyone whose sole underlying medical condition is a mental illness is legally barred from accessing MAID in Canada. That expansion was met with heavy pushback and has been officially delayed until at least March 17th, 2027. There is talk about expanding it to include certain mental illnesses, but this has been pushed back, and it's been pushed back several times because there's just so many ethical considerations with regard to it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it got pushed back further than March 17th, 2027, when it does. Furthermore, MAID is strictly limited to adults 18 and older, and I'm going to put here, MAID came into effect in Canada in June 2016. So we're talking, at that time, there was some talk about whether or not it should be expanded for mental illnesses. And based on this, the decision is delayed until March 17th, 2027. Excuse me, kids and cubs, for a second here. I have to cough. I have a tickle in my throat. And it appears that I have gone fuzzy again. So there we go. Hopefully that will be better. So we're looking now at 11 years pretty much, until after it was brought into an effect. And there still has not been a consensus reached on the mental health issue enough for there to be policy that is established on this. And I don't understand why it is. I keep on going fuzzy. Very weird. All right. So it wouldn't surprise me if the coming into effect of provisions with regard to that would be delayed even further. It's a very murky area in which nobody's been able to reach consensus now for the better part of 10 years. The bottom line, let's be precise, 1 out of every 20 total deaths in Canada, about 5% is from MAID, but if you look inside that 5%, it consists almost entirely of terminally ill elderly patients, not depressed kids. And if you want more information on that, you can go to Health Canada's 6th annual report on MAID, which was released in late 2025, detailing 2024 data. And you can also look at Bill C-39 and C-62, delaying MAID for mental illness until 2027 here. So just to be clear, that there are 2 tracks currently. There's terminal illness, people whose death is foreseeable, and people who have chronic illnesses. That death may not be foreseeable immediately, but they've had an illness that has been painful. They've struggled with it for a long time, and they're just tired. So yeah, terminal people with terminal conditions represent 95.6% of all cases, and people with long-term chronic illnesses who have just had enough represents even just 4.4% of cases. Mental illness as the sole condition, 0. Minors and kids, 0. So it's not happening. But Pierre is indulging this as if it is. He did not take advantage of the opportunity to explicitly lay out that currently, and since it has started, that there has been no one offered MAID for mental illness alone, and no minor has been offered it. He could have done that. He could have used that opportunity to no, just like he did no on Fidel Castro being Justin Trudeau's dad. But he didn't. He indulged in this one. He let the conspiracy sort of stand so that Pierre could claim that he stood against it for sole purpose of mental illness and for kids, while not making it very clear that that is not happening at the moment, and trying to create the impression that he believes it's a matter of choice when he does not. Not at all. Because Pierre, in the manner that he voted, chose for you. You can't have access to this. So he doesn't believe that it is a personal choice in any way, shape, or form. And then didn't do anything to dispel the other conspiracy theory that there may or may not be an industry, a MAID industry here that is profitable and whose profits need to increase and depend on us actually feeding more people through the system, actually putting people to death for money. Because our system here is not for profit. So it's not like in the United States. And Pierre did not choose to dispel that. I'm just going to check up my notes here. Sorry, I wrote some notes down and just need to check my handwriting for a second here. They get to talking again about other stuff, and then Rogan sort of goes on to the subject of Trudeau, the son. Pierre doesn't bite on it, but does mention that visit, that moment where President Joe Biden visited Canada, and Pierre introduced himself to Joe Biden like he was the leader of His Majesty's loyal official opposition, and Joe Biden went, "Loyal, huh?" Because, I mean, he knew about Pierre. Pierre took that moment and then repackaged that as you know, him needing to explain to Joe Biden, who had been a senator for over 30 years and has dealt with Canada many, 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 many times, and probably already knew this, that we did have a loyal opposition, and how this, to Americans might sound weird because, well, they're a republic and both of them are adversarial, but in Canada, our opposition is actually loyal, and that's a different thing. Um, uh, Now, while it is true that in Canada our opposition is supposed to be loyal, and that we do have a different governance tradition because we basically took the Westminster parliamentary system. Um, that's the reason. Hey, he said it to Joe Biden that Joe Biden didn't seem to understand that or didn't have knowledge of that. Was a total and complete fabrication. Then they get on to a little bit about the 51st state. This is a clip you may have seen already because it was probably one of the bigger moments of the show. And Pierre, how would I put it? Does the thing that he's done before, basically stating that 51st state is never going to happen. A lot of people looked at this and said, this is a Pierre standing up to Trump or pushing back on Trump. Some of the hardest pushback we've seen from him yet. I'm going to let you listen to this and actually determine for yourself whether or not this was, you would consider this as either pushbacking up too. So, that was the extent of that portion there. He does go into other stuff that kind of supports this later on, but that was the end of that specific portion of pushing back. Never mentions Trump by name. Joe Rogan actually pushed back against Trump harder by saying it's a crazy thing to say. Pierre did say that Canadians are right to be upset, which I think was the first time I ever heard that from him, because he seems to live in a reality where he doesn't seem to acknowledge that that happened. For the most part, when he keeps on talking about, our relationship is great, and all we need to do is go to the United States and say, if you can't have this tariff, you can't have this if you don't give this to us tariff free. Like nobody's ever thought of that before, or even tried it, and we didn't get very far with that. But yeah, they're again basically the bare minimum, really. They could say, but there was no pushback, and we got back to one of his famous lines previously. What would you do if you had Trump in that 51st state? I would tell him to knock it off. I just wish he would knock that shit off. Again, hope, wishing. You can't hope that Trump is going to stop on something once he's fixated. You can't wish that he's going to stop. You actually have to make it impossible. So standing up and saying that the 51st state is never going to happen, which is something that he said in the previous speech also, it's never going to happen. And therefore, there's no real reason to be worried about that. I say, no, that's not true. We saw Venezuela. We saw Trump getting ready to go into Greenland. We just got reports that one of the reasons that Trump may have stopped, or at least maybe he got wind of it, or maybe he didn't, but it seems that some of the military exercises that we're doing there, we weren't just going there for the military exercises. We were bringing things. I mean, the Danish had actually sent pints of blood in case people needed medical care on Greenland specifically. They had plans to destroy airport runways so that the United States could not fly planes in and land them. They brought explosives in order to be able to do that. Okay? They were preparing. It wasn't just a military exercise. They were bringing supplies during that military exercise. Oh, no, 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 it's just regular military exercise. Bring in the blood and bring in the explosives. We might need those later. This is a good time to sneak them in. So no, there was no real pushback here from Pierre on this one. Not really here. Um, he didn't say, he couldn't even say Trump's name specifically in this segment where he's allegedly pushing back. But yeah, I wish he would knock that shit off. Okay, well, at least he's admitting that it's shit. But yeah, that's about as far as Pierre was willing to go there. And again, a lot of people, oh my God, he pushed back against Trump. I'm like, this, strongest defense yet of Canada. No, not really, not really. The reason we are so concerned is because it can happen. We see what's going on in Iran. We see what's going on in Cuba. We are concerned because it can happen. The United States could send a whole bunch of people and invade. That's why we're concerned. Pierre doesn't seem to admit that part of the reality. All right. They continue here, and this here is a portion. It's about just under 4 minutes. And this is here a portion which comes immediately after this. So all I did was pause, and I'm going to just keep on playing, where Pierre actually did well. I'm going to give him the points here on this one. All right. So in that section, like I said, he actually does well. Ooh, no video. Oh boy. Okay. Sorry, kits and cubs, about that. I thought that the thing happened. Ah, darn. All right. Yeah, sorry. I didn't see you guys saying that there was no video because I was on the video screen itself, so I can make sure to stop it at the correct time. Okay, so I will have to put, and let me just take a note here. Okay, probably around 1:53. I'm gonna have to put a note in the description to tell people to fast forward. And all right, I will go back to that section. I am so sorry, kits and cubs, that it did not display as planned. Oh, I hate that when that happens. All right, let's go back to the section. 22, yeah, okay. All right, I need to fast forward it just a couple of seconds more here to make sure I've got the right starting point. Okay. So sorry, kits and cubs, that the video link did not take over as was supposed to. Okay, now it has. So here you go, kits and cubs. So Pierre actually acquitted himself pretty well in that section. Made a compelling case that could be um, convincing to US voters about why it is that tariffs against Canada are a bad thing. Public opinion polling seems to indicate that a very strong majority of people in the United States believe that it is completely stupid that Trump is doing that to us. So Pierre Poilievre is able to feed into that and to give people some actual real reasons. Mentioning that we do sell our oil at a discount, mentioning that the cost of lumber, for example, when it comes to housing, the aluminum and steel for everything that the United States needs, all that kind of stuff. So all these things are factual. It's very true. He delivers it. He delivers it ably. He makes a very good point, and he makes it well here. And oddly enough, this is a segment that did not get a lot of clips. If you're looking around, that you might have missed here. So again, we believe. We don't have much love for Pierre Poilievre, but we do believe in giving credit where it was due. And in that section, he actually did. He actually did. Um, Come up with a statement that was true, that was cogent, that was coherent, that was in line with his stated objective of fighting for Canadian workers and tariff-free trade. But in that 2 hour and 22-minute interview, that was the extent of that moment and that fight in there. There's other things in general that sort of feed into that, but that was like the main core, right? Uh, and it seems to me, again, that if you were going on the show for that purpose, you would have been maximizing every single moment where you could have made that case. And that was not the case here. Um, in this particular video. In fact, um, right here, we're at about minute 22 in the video. And there are other clips that you've probably seen here. There was one here where he's talking about he believes, in one prime minister at a time, and that he's actually, informing the prime minister of what he's doing. There's other articles out there indicating that the prime minister may have even suggested to Pierre a couple of people that Pierre would have wanted to meet with during his time in the United States. Again, probably helpful to Pierre, considering that article, again by Mickey Jurich, that seemed to indicate that Pierre doesn't have that many contacts in the United States because he's been rather insular. Um, So that part was kind of interesting. We know that Pierre does not necessarily believe in the rule of one prime minister at a time because the entire time he's a leader of the opposition here, he keeps on behaving like he should be prime minister instead of the current prime minister and keeps on seeming to take actions to attempt to supplant him or supplant his policies. So not exactly sure. Uh, I believe that from him. But hey, he said it on that stage, and if that's the line that's going to work for him now, then fine. Um, but the line about communicating with the prime minister about what he's doing while he's away was kind of interesting there. Of course, if you've been paying attention, it seems that the leader of the opposition's view of the prime minister changed somewhat when they were both in Tumbler Ridge for that memorial. There was a moment where somebody was delivering an address and they even locked hands. And it seems that um, Pierre um, gained some respect for the prime minister, claims that the prime minister gained some respect for him. You could not tell that in the manner that Pierre keeps on talking about the prime minister at home, if you check out his Twitter feed. But it seems that there is some type of begrudging respect. Um, One of the people that Garrett did meet with while he was down there was uh, financier, CEO of Pershing Square, co-trustee, Bill Ackman. He has some pictures here. Thank you to Bill Ackman for meeting to discuss how to strengthen Canada-U.S. relations, bring affordability and opportunity with tariff-free trade, and stamp out anti-Semitism in the West. And then you had a whole bunch of people clapping back on that. For example, billionaire Bill Ackman defends $10,000 donation to ICE agent who shot Renee Good. When I talk about some of these his trips not necessarily being carefully planned. Oh, Pierre, conservative, they're good with the economy. He told to talk to Bill Ackman, CEO of Pushing Square. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I got that name wrong, I'm sure. Pershing Square, not Pushing Square. Um, oh, look at him. He's well connected and working. Yeah, seems that out of all the businessmen that he could have potentially met with that had a high profile, he may have been able, his research or scouting team may have been able to pick someone who didn't make a $10,000 donation to the ICE agent who shot an American citizen after dropping off her child at school. Another one. Bill Ackman is a billionaire hedge fund manager who's a key Trump donor and supporter. Ackman is a significant financial backer of the Israeli Defense Forces and their genocide in Gaza and Lebanon. Well, Pierre is all in on what Israel is doing on Lebanon. Another person. You met with one of the most dangerous ideologically twisted MAGA fluffers in America. One reason the USA is going down the political toilet, rich assholes like Ackman pillaging the last scrapes of meat off the bones of American democracy. Congrats. So yeah. And for clarity, everyone, Bill Ackman is a frequent retweeter of Stephen Miller and is also a disgusting Islamophobe. People asking, are you meeting with Roger Stone and Stephen Miller next? Why didn't you help the Canadians stuck in ICE detention during your vanity tour? While he was in the UK, Pierre Poilievre also met with some interesting people. He met with a gentleman named Declan Ganley. And, well, according to the irishtimes.com business section, Declan Ganley, the founder of Rivada Networks, has been threatened with arrest or imprisonment if he doesn't appear before a New York judge to explain delays in payments he was ordered to make as part of a bitter $20 million debt dispute. Mr. Ganley has been accused by David Schumann, a New York investor who is also a shareholder in Rivada, of, quote, failing to auction or sell property and for failing to make monthly installment payments of $20,000 as he was ordered by the court. Judge Jennifer Schechter of the Supreme Court of New York was warned Ganley has warned Ganley that he faces a contempt of court charge if he cannot explain the delays. If he is found guilty, the punishment may consist of a fine or imprisonment or both, and if he fails to appear, it may result in his immediate arrest or imprisonment, the court documents state. The development is the latest in an ongoing dispute between Mr. Ganley and David Schumann, a shareholder in Rivada, to whom Mr. Ganley owes about $20 million arising out of a default debt judgment secured in a U.S. court. As part of that ruling, Mr. Ganley was required to surrender shares in Rivada to pay Mr. Schumann $20,000 a month in installments and to auction off certain assets he owned here in Ireland, including some vehicles, land, and a pub in Galway. According to claims by Mr. Schumann's lawyers and filings to the Supreme Court of New York, Mr. Ganley has fallen behind on both the auction of assets and the installment plans. So, yeah. Again, Mr. Poilievre hanging around with some of the best people. And his research team not having taken the time to vet who he was meeting with before he went. But yes. Yes, indeed. People involved in alleged fraud schemes, and someone who offered $10,000 to the ICE officer who shot and killed an American citizen for protesting. Well, allegedly for protesting. But it seems that she was just dropping off her kid at school. So yeah, not necessarily the best moments here on these trips. There's more that I could show you today. I might save it for another day. But you get the idea. There was also an opportunity for him to take a shot at Prime Minister Mark Carney specifically, and he took a pass on that one too, stating that he would not attack a prime minister on Canadian soil. To which Joe Rogan responded, "Well, that seems to be like a very Canadian thing to do." And it is, but it's also, our basic rule here that we do not do those types of things. So, there's nothing to be gained from it here to go on a foreign show and attack your own country. Not that he hasn't done it before. I mean, he has attacked it when he was in Europe. He certainly decided to attack the green industry in Canada, calling them green grifters. So, some of these things appear to be new policy positions for Pierre, probably courtesy of his new campaign manager, Steve Outhouse, trying to make Pierre look a little better than he is. Let's see, what else do we have here on that? I just wanted to check. There was a couple of other moments that Pierre had that were interesting. He did make the case that, like he makes so often, that in Germany they approved an LNG import terminal in 60 days, completed the whole damn thing in less than 200 days, and guess what? No environmental problems. That is not true. Again, according to Flavio Ivan on Twitter. It triggered massive environmental backlash and ongoing legal battles. While Germany did rebuild the Wilhelmshaven terminal at record speed, 194 days, to replace Russian gas, Poilievre's claim that there were no problems is a total fabrication. Skipping the assessment, Germany only achieved this speed by passing the LNG Acceleration Act, which specifically allowed authorities to waive the standard environmental impact assessment for floating terminals. To prevent pipe clogging, the terminal was permitted to discharge tons of chlorine biocide directly into the Wadden Sea, a sensitive UNESCO-protected ecosystem. Environmental groups filed immediate lawsuits arguing the project bypassed critical protections and threatened local marine life and mussel farmers. Germany made a conscious choice to prioritize energy security over environmental scrutiny during a wartime emergency. To frame this as a problem-free success story for deregulation is a complete erasure of the ecological risks and legal fights still happening on the ground today, as well as the situational context that happened at the time. So, yeah, when you're in a wartime situation, sometimes you will definitely make decisions and cut some corners here. Um, uh, on There was another moment when we're talking about trade where Pierre uh, he tells tariffs that that we showed you that tariffs are a bad idea because they tax your own people and hurt your own workers, and he even pitches a work vision of tariff-free North America. So there, he's presenting a different image of himself than he has over here, where he has been asking specifically, "Where are your elbows?" Right? Where are the elbows? Oh, it looks like it's elbows down. Oh, elbows up. Ha ha. Yuck, 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 yuck. Right. On October 1st, 2025, after Trump doubled the lumber tariffs, Poilievre blasted Carney in Ottawa, saying, quote, "While Mark Carney breaks his promise, puts his elbows down, and gets trampled on by foreign leaders, our workers lose their jobs." But in March 2025, Pierre demanded that Canada match Trump's 50% metal tariffs dollar for dollar to show strength. So he's on Joe Rogan. Maybe we should eliminate all these tariffs, because it works. But that's not what Pierre called for when he was here. He wanted to match dollar for dollar and escalate the tariff fight. So he's going to the United States and telling the Americans listening to the show that tariffs are a bad idea. They tax their own people, but he demanded that we be taxed 50% on what we export as well. And the prime minister actually removed some of the counter tariffs that he believed, or that he and his team believed, were actually counterproductive, and no longer serving us. And Pierre mocked Carney for having done that. So he goes on Joe Rogan and tells him that tariffs are a mistake. And as Flavio Ivan puts it, he's a hawk in the House of Commons, but a dove the second he crosses the border. So it seems to be contradicting himself, again, presenting himself as different than he actually is. He makes a claim somewhere along there when he's talking about inflation and printing money that the Swiss do not print money. The reality is that, again, according to Flavio Ivan, the Swiss are famous for printing massive amounts of money. Poilievre frames Switzerland as a hard money utopia, but he fundamentally misrepresents how their central bank actually operates. Between 2009 and 2021, the Swiss National Bank created hundreds of billions of new francs to buy foreign assets like Apple and Microsoft stocks to keep the currency from getting too strong. The Swiss National Bank's balance sheet exploded to over 1 trillion francs, roughly 100% of Switzerland's entire annual GDP. And we have to remember that the price of things in Switzerland are way more expensive than it is in Canada. In fact, Switzerland is the most expensive country in Europe, with Zurich and Geneva consistently being ranked among the world's most expensive cities. In Switzerland, for example, a McDonald's meal will cost you about $20 Canadian there. An average health insurance for one adult is about $620 a month. So not only do the Swiss print money, but their economic model, quote, comes with a cost of living that would give the average Canadian massive sticker shock. Later on, the issue of marijuana comes up as well. And Pierre once again talks about it as if he believes it is an issue of personal choice and freedom of choice, like he believes that. And again, that is not true whatsoever from him. He definitely voted against that. He says, this one I will keep for a moment that I will share later, because he mentioned a quote that he believes in, that he says that he lives by, but there's actually no evidence of that here. But when we're talking about Bill C-45, the Cannabis Act to legalize recreational marijuana, He pressed the nay button at the second reading, the third reading, and on the final amendments. So if you want to check that for yourself, you can watch. You can go to House of Commons votes number 312, 399, and 427 at our Parliament, and look for yourself. During the debates on Bill C-45, the official Conservative platform entered into the record was that legalization would, quote, make homegrown marijuana more accessible to children and help organize crime. Pierre Poilievre, again, a quote here from Flavio Ivan, quote, and now Poilievre sits in Rogan's studio where Joe literally smokes on air, paraphrasing Thomas Jefferson about, quote, trusting a man to govern himself. You can't claim to be the ultimate freedom candidate while holding a voting record that supported giving Canadians a criminal record for a joint. He loves curated truth. And that's the thing. There was a lot of curated truth. Even on Bitcoin, right? If you remember during the 2022 campaign, he went to a sandwich shop to tell you that Bitcoin was a safe haven from a ruined currency. He still attacks the Bank of Canada, but seems to have calmed down his desire to make Canada the blockchain capital of the world, if you remember that, and saying that crypto is a great way for us to opt out of inflation. So yeah, when we get to about the hour point in the interview, Pierre once again starts doing the thing that he was doing in the beginning, starts interviewing Rogan instead, starts asking him a lot of questions about mixed martial arts, making a statement. There's a lot of, yes, oh, really, wow, to some of the things that Joe Rogan is stating here. So again, to try to, ingratiate himself. But the whole, after the 1 hour point, there are basically just two or three segments somewhat of note. One where they're talking about his apple munching incident. The other one where they talk about Alberta's separation a little bit right near the end. And then, how he basically ends the whole show. But the rest of it is just casual conversations, similar to what Mr. Grizzly and I have during our podcasts, where there's not much talk about of anything Canada or anything politics whatsoever, where it's Pierre, who happens to clearly be very fitness oriented, spends a lot of time sharing fitness or mixed martial arts or various martial arts information that he has, or things that he believes, or things that he enjoys with Joe Rogan, and keeping Joe Rogan talking about things that Joe Rogan really likes, thus making it such that you are offered fewer opportunities to attack Trudeau or Carney or that type of stuff, or subjects to talk about where you could be contradicting yourself based on what you said in Canada. So again, if the stated goal was to fight for tariff-free deal with the United States and for Canadian workers and Canadian jobs, while he did have a couple of moments where the subject came up in conversation, where he did do things, and in those moments did acquit himself relatively well, he far from maximized the time. It seemed that he ran out the clock for most of the time, keeping Joe Rogan engaged with either sucking up or talking to him about subjects that Joe Rogan likes, and asking him a lot of questions about what he believes on those subjects, rather than being the one who took the questions. Overall, not a particularly satisfying experience, but it wasn't the train wreck that I expected it was going to be. There were a lot of times where it was mentally difficult to remain checked in, because they were talking about things that were just, just of no interest to me specifically. Um, I'm not a UFC follower, any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I know who Jean-Yves Thériault is, and I know who Georges St-Pierre is because they were exceptional in their individual fields, and they're just part of my general culture, but not because I followed them in any way, shape, or form. Um, yeah. So I learned more about the history of the kettlebell than I ever wanted to know. But yeah, it is like I said, wasn't a disaster. Clearly a lot of sucking up, clearly a lot of mirroring, a lot of curated truth on the part of Pierre Poilievre to not talk about some of his past decisions. Um, that weren't in line with things that Joe Rogan believes now. Let's put it that way. Not sure if he believed them then, but whether or not what he says he believes now. Um, did get Joe Rogan many times to say that he loves Canada. Surely that won't hurt. Dude tried many times to say, hey, we're going to convince you to come back, come here. Again, it doesn't hurt, but still some sucking up. Um, Lots of sucking up, probably about, like, at least 5 or 6 instances, for sure, where, "Well, we need to send you some of that. We need to get you here. We'll need to hook you up with that," or something of the sort. Um, Almost like he was trying to make a friend of Joe Rogan for the future, a bit more than, defend Canadian interests specifically. Maybe, as some people have speculated, Pierre realizing that he's over and starting to lay the groundwork for his career as a public commentator, using his communication gifts, if you can call them that, for those types of purposes in order to monetize them once he's gone, than anything else. But he did not do any damage to us. Um, Probably met some of his objectives with regard to the audience who would be listening. Um, Probably met some domestic objectives if the audience in Canada that was listening, if the good portion of it was an audience that is predisposed to like him. Um, Probably didn't do himself any disservice with them. Got some of the media pundit class to do the thing that they do with Pierre all the time is every time he has a statesman-like moment or a moment where he's just not a complete and utter dick, wanting to offer him all the cookies in the world. Oh, this is the pivot. This is the thing we've been waiting for. I saw one commentator, I think it was on Rosemary Barton Live. Yes, oh, we're getting to see another side of Pierre that was there all along. So we don't know if that side was there all along. He's had 22 years to show it that it was there all along. We just seen it for the first time during this interview. Maybe it wasn't there all along. Maybe it was something his campaign manager grabbed him by the ears and shook him a little bit and said, "You need to do this if you want to have any hope of being around for the next election." Um, but yes, I'm always fascinated by the Canadian media circuit, willing to wipe the slate clean of everything he's done over the past 22 years every time he has a moment, and willing to promote him and package him as the new and improved Pierre, who's now changed this time for realsies. Really, 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 this time for realsies. Unlike the 32 other times he's changed before, where we wiped the sweet clean and said, "Yeah, now we finally got a new Pierre. This is the real one. Yeah, it was there the whole time." We are supposed to believe. Girls, come on. So yeah, um, like I said, could have been worse. Could have been a train wreck. Was not a train wreck. But was it 2 hours and 20 minutes of him fighting for the reduction of tariffs and fighting for Canadian? No, it wasn't either. The majority of probably close to half the time was Pierre actually interviewing Joe Rogan and speaking about things like kettlebells and bringing it back to fitness and bringing it back to fitness, often bringing conversation back to the terrain that Joe Rogan is good with. Good eating, clean eating, fitness, martial arts, history of the kettlebell, that type of stuff. Um, Clever way to run out the clock, absolutely, but not particularly good for the stated objectives. So there you go, kids and cubs. That's our assessment. Uh, Not so bad overall, but you have to be listening with a very critical ear. All right. Kit Saucy asks me, have I finished Ripper yet? No, I have not finished Ripper yet because brilliant me, while I was on the plane back from Mexico to Canada, my Beaver sweetie, wanting to be helpful, took the book out of the bag and put it in the front pouch of the seat in front of me for the flight so that I could pick up the book at any time and read it. And of course, during that flight, I was pretty exhausted, so I did not. And then when we picked up everything to leave the flight, I left the book in the front pouch. So I'm hoping that a friend will be able to retrieve it for me. Air Canada said that they could send it back to me by FedEx, but they wanted $82 for it, which I could pretty much go to the library, the bookstore, and buy two more. And so I didn't think that was a particularly good deal. So I have a friend who might be able to pick it up at the airport for me at some point because they have found it and be able to get it back to me. And that's what I'm waiting for. To be able to happen. But no, I was not able to finish it, unfortunately, during the vacation, as I had hoped. We had been thrown a couple of curveballs and did not have as much time to read as I would have liked. And then, of course, forgot the book on the plane because, well, that's just the kind of beaver I am. So, yeah, I am waiting, waiting for that. I have no problem buying the book again if I need to. It's a good book and it's worth the money. But yes, I'd rather if I'm going to do that, I'd rather go to the bookstore and hand another $42 or whatever it is to the actual bookstore and support a local business than I give 80 something to FedEx. Right. I still don't understand why it is that um, it would cost so much to send a book. But hey, yes, my book is definitely being well traveled. But yes, let's see here. What is it? Have you finished Ripper? We need an interview with Mark Burry. Jesse Brown is currently trying to mess with him. I was also hacked twice on my Twitter account after John Bear's troll account. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about that. I can honestly see. Um, there's been some stuff. I don't know the full details, but I know that there were people that did support Jesse Brown at some point who seems to have been turned off from him over the past few years. So, yeah, we have a comment here from Kit. Pastor Gabe, hey, it's nice to see you. It's been a while. I was impressed that he was able to speak like an adult, but even a broken clock is correct twice a day. Indeed. So that's the thing, though, right? Is that in moments like this, we see that Pierre does have the ability to human. He just chooses not to engage it all those times when we see him and he's doing the Pierre things that he does. So I may have some additional clips from the interview at other points during the week rather than going on for another hour and showing various clips like that. I think those ones gave you the gist and you got enough of that, particularly again, since most of the time was not used effectively for the purpose which he said he was going on the show. I didn't expect that all 2 hours and 20 minutes being him selling Canada, selling Canada, selling Canada. It is long form, and you want to show again that you can be human and talk about other things. But for the stated objective, the proportions were off. What I would say, one could make the case that him having mentioned it in passing when an opportunity came up and without him making the hard sale could have been a more effective way to get the message out to the American public who was watching the video, who might be, and the American public who needs to be convinced more that it is actually not a good idea to go to war, trade war with Canada, unlike what Trump is claiming. Try to create a little bit of that wedge there. Maybe a softer sell is a better approach. There's a case to be made for that. I will honestly and readily admit. I still would have liked to have seen more than just 2 or 3 minutes somewhere around the 28-minute mark. I would have liked to seen a little more insistence on why it is we don't understand, or we think it's ill-advised for the president of the United States to have the stance, the anti-Canadian stance that he currently does have. But hey, baby steps. It is a slight improvement from the Pierre that we have come to know, despite all the curated truth and as I keep on saying, Pierre is not so much a policy guy as he is a storyteller. He loves to tell stories, and in this one, he got to tell a lot of stories, and a lot of them not having to do with Canada specifically, but just with subjects that Pierre knew was going to be of interest to Joe Rogan. You could see that Pierre did a lot of research on Joe Rogan specifically to be able to come on that show, and spent more time doing the soft sell to Joe Rogan specifically, which again could have some benefits in the future. There could be subjects on future shows where Canada comes up and he remembers his conversation with Pierre Poilievre and brings some of those elements in. You never know. Rogan does seem to believe that it is a crazy idea for Trump to be tariffing Canada the way that he is, or that talking about 51st state. So, there could be some residual effect that permeates the show, that is brought back to those listeners repeatedly after Pierre goes. There could be that benefit from this type of performance. I won't say that it's a guarantee, but I won't rule it out. Like I said, there's some people that are willing to listen to this and say, "Oh, he just screwed it up and it was crap and nothing good came out of it." And so, and I'm an optimist. I try to look for the good stuff. I try to look for when people are being helpful. I like to give credit when it's due, and there are some moments to give them credit. I will be honestly honest. I will be totally honest about that. Pains me to say it. In one way, it pains me to say it. In another way, it doesn't, because I mean, I like giving the real deal. But I would have loved to been able to come on the show and say, "Oh my God, PP just like shoved his foot in his mouth so far he could taste his kneecaps," but he didn't in this one, and they actually had one or two moments that were okay. So, but it's the whole thing as an exercise on its own is not worth your time for 2 hours and 20 minutes to listen to it. The defense of Canada elements are too few and far between to make this a good investment of your time. You will probably get as good a sense as you need about the stuff involving the Canada-US relationship from the clips that are circulating. Sometimes you may not get the benefit of seeing how the topic of this conversation came about, because there is a certain squirrel element to a free flow conversation of this kind. So, you can mention something, they were talking about something at one point, and Joe Rogan was mentioning that this certain person was in Alberta, and that's how they got onto the subject of Alberta's separation. So the way that the subjects come up are kind of interesting, and in that sense, if you're listening to all of it, you will get that element that doesn't come in the curated clips. That's why in some of the clips I tried to show a little bit what came before, to try to give you a sense of that, rather than just the straight clip that you might see here circulating on the socials. But there wasn't it wasn't it wasn't a must see TV or must see podcast or must listen to podcast. It wasn't all that it could be. Um, and maybe too subtle for what was needed at the time and not plentiful enough for what was needed at the time. But again, that I admit that that could be a perspective of a more advocacy based myself, who would give the advice to maximize every opportunity without making it seem like it's a hard sell. So yeah, that's essentially my view of it. Like I said, it could have been way worse, and it could have done some damage. Pierre definitely did not hurt himself by going on the show. Um, if anything, if he did hurt himself, it would probably be with uh, hardcore dyed in the wool Trump supporters because he wasn't 100% completely effusive and butt kissing of Trump. But then again, he didn't go out of his way either to attack, slag, or diminish. Just basically said that the tariffs were not a good idea and that the 51st state would never happen. And that was the extent, pretty much, of any pushback there. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, so please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you share a little bit about yourself, like, for example, saying why it is our content resonates with you or the specific clip that you are sharing or anything of the like. Uh, um, why does it caught your attention? We definitely love that. That is advertising we cannot buy. And when we see you do that, it really does make us happy. So thank you so much for all the effort that you put in getting the word out about our show. And it is working. Our viewership numbers per episode have been rising and rising substantially over the past few months. And I'm sure that that has, it maybe has a little bit to do with the quality of the work, but probably has a lot more to do with you guys going out there and sharing it. So thank you so very much. If you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, you can here scan this QR code if you are not listening to our YouTube podcast, or even if you are, you can still scan it. Although I'm not sure what good it will do you. But if you happen to be listening to our YouTube podcast at the current moment and have not yet clicked on our subscribe button, could you please do that? Because that definitely helps us with the algorithm. And while you're there, you can click on the like and share buttons as well. Kids Cassie and Elaine would definitely approve. And if you are watching, remember, if you smash now, you don't have to remember to do it before the show ends, especially if you smash early, like when the show starts. We're a big fan of early smashes. All right, kids and cubs. And if you would like to help us in other ways, let's say financially, for example, because we do incur some costs to bring this show to you, especially now that we're completely independent again, this QR code will bring you to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, where you could buy your favorite beaver a mug of hot chocolate or your favorite grizzly a cup of hot coffee, because a moist beaver is a very happy beaver. Mm. They have it on a good authority. A moist bear is also not unhappy. Just saying. But if you want to do your bit to keep your favorite beaver moist, then a little contribution would definitely be appreciated. We thank you so very much. If you contribute via our coffee page, we get 95 to 97% of your donation. If you contribute via super chat and memberships on our YouTube page, we get about 70% of your donation. But if you are doing the Buy Canadian thing and do not want to support the CE Tech Bros, you would do an entirely Canadian transaction by using our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and you make a bank transfer from your bank, Canadian institution, to ours, Canadian institution. None of the money goes through the United States, and we get 100% of your donation on top of that. So it's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation all around there. And we thank you for whatever it is that you are able to contribute. Every single nickel helps. There's no donation too small. So we thank you again for all you do to support us. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, remember that we have federal by-elections on April 13th in University Rosedale, Scarborough Southwest, and Terrebonne. So please make your plan to vote there. And of course, if you have not yet, you might want to call Elections Canada if you live in the area and volunteer at a polling station, or not volunteer because these are paid positions, but say that you are available for some important work shifts. Remember that early voting at your polling station is from April 3rd to 6th, and that you can vote anytime until April 7th, I believe, at your local Elections Canada office. And if you want to vote by mail, you have to make sure that you make your request before April 7th so that the envelope has time to get to you and you have time to fill it out and get it back in time for it to be counted. If you are a member of the federal NDP, leadership voting is happening right now with the convention to take place on the 29th. And there, if you're going in person in Winnipeg, you can vote there on the 29th. But there too, again, make sure if you have a mail-in ballot that it gets in on time. And that will be next weekend. I guess we will be getting the results for that. So very interesting to see who will be the new leader. It seems that based on fundraising, at least, one would think that it's Avi Lewis, but the NDP does have an interesting system for voting. They don't do like other parties where they do a point system for each riding, and you have someone that's generally accepted throughout the country. Here, it's just strictly one member, one vote. So if you are very popular in downtown Toronto, you can get a lot of people there to come and vote more than that would come from the rest of the country. That alone can get you the leadership. So they have a slightly different system. And therefore, perhaps if we are looking at fundraising, that would indicate that Avi Lewis is clearly the front runner here. I believe that Heather McPherson raised less money, but maybe from more donors, which could be another thing here, if I'm not mistaken. But don't quote me on that one. I need to go check that data again. But the amount you raise in fundraising and the number of donors as well. So if Avi Lewis has both the highest amount and the most donors, that would probably indicate even more that he's likely to win. However, if he has the most money but not necessarily the most donors, um, each vote has the exact same weight. So if everybody who donated shows up to vote, then another candidate may actually end up with more votes despite having less funds raised. So we still have to wait. It still is going to be um, there's still the possibility for a mystery or a surprise here. The 29th is also your last day to participate in the public consultation for the high speed rail project. You can go to altotrain.ca to participate in that. There are online and in person information sessions, as well as other ways for you to supply your feedback to the public consultation. If you are in Quebec, I believe that April 12th, the day before by-election day, is the day that we will find out who is the new CAQ leader. So I'm not sure if it's still able to get your memberships to vote in that, or if that deadline has passed yet. But will come time to vote relatively soon, if not already. So please make sure that your voice is heard there. And same thing in British Columbia in May, I believe it is, will be the vote for the leader of the BC Conservative Party. Again, you might want to get involved there and buy membership, particularly if you happen to not necessarily be a conservative and would like the least worst of the candidates to be the one that's on the ballot. You might think it's in your interest to buy membership and do your bit for that to happen as well. Again, as we keep on saying, party politics, whether provincial or federal, is where the real action is at if you want to make sure that you have quality candidates. That is the reason, that is the area or the time to which to get involved, where your vote technically has more weight because there are way fewer people that vote in leadership races than vote in general elections. So it's easier to have a greater share of influence if you vote at that stage as well as during the general elections. I think that's everything for the democracy is something that you do portion today, kids and cubs. So, some words of wisdom. It's a bright, fresh new week with no mistakes in it already. So far. Well, I've made one already. I forgot to switch the screen on a video. But assuming that that didn't happen, it's a bright, fresh new week with no mistakes in it already. So if you're going to go out and make a mistake, make it one that is memorable and that will make you smile 10 years down the road. That's my word of wisdom. All right, kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And at the count of three, can I please hear you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Ah, yes, I hear you. So melodious and slightly polyphonic, too. Some great, great, great voices out there asking me for that which it is I cannot deny you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, don't have too much for you after the show, but just a little brief moment of Canadians who make us proud. I'm not sure if I had mentioned it last week, but Gabriela Dabrowski, our doubles tennis player, top-ranked doubles tennis player, was playing at Indian Wells a couple of, maybe last week, and there is one of the few tour tournaments where there actually is a mixed doubles tournament because the men and women compete at the same tournament at the same time. And there, Gabriela Dabrowski, with her partner, won that mixed doubles tournament. Not sure if that gives her anything in terms of ranking points, but the overall prize money for the tournament was $1 million. So she certainly left with a healthy paycheck from that performance. So all the props to her at the moment. For that achievement. Dabrowski is playing currently at the event in Miami and has won all of her matches so far, and I believe is in the third round. Same goes for Victoria Umboko in the doubles tournament there. And I think they have all advanced to the third round. Leila Fernandez, second round, sorry. Leila Fernandez, unfortunately, who was teamed up with Venus Williams again, lost in their first round to the number 6 seed, so they don't continue. And there was a little bit of controversy last week because they were supposed to participate in Indian Wells, but it seems that some registration documentation did not get in at the proper time, and therefore they were denied a spot. Which is a shame because they are actually a pretty fun team to watch together. But that is about all I have for you. There were some great results from other Canadians over the course of the weekend in other sports. Actually, if I can find them for you very quickly, perhaps. But just going to take a look very quickly. Yes, we had Naomi Ernest, who won the free ski big air gold at an event and to claim a Crystal Globe title for the season. If you are watching the March Madness men's brackets, there are over 35 Canadians participating in that tournament. So maybe some future Olympians in there. Aurélie Moisin got her first World Cup podium, earning bronze alongside teammate Arnaud Godet, who got the win at a snowboard event in Winterberg, Switzerland. There. Yesterday, by the way, if you didn't know, was World Water Day, and we recently had the end of Ramadan and the big celebrations of Eid, and then we had Nowruz for the Persian community, the Persian New Year. So if we have any Muslim and Persian kids who listen to the show, I hope that your celebrations were filled with love and laughter, good food, and good memories. And Canada's Eli Bouchard claimed his first snowboard slopestyle World Cup win in Lac-Beauport, Quebec, scoring 81.11 on his first run to secure the victory. The event wasn't in Lac-Beauport, Quebec. Eli Bouchard is from Lac-Beauport, Quebec, and the victory was in Flachau, Austria. And of course, there was that track and field event, the World Indoor Championships, and Christopher Morales Williams won the 400-meter title there under 45 seconds. It's the first sub-45 indoor time run outside the USA. So that was a good win for him. Sarah Mitten, I believe, picked up the silver in the shot put. She was trying to three-peat as champion. Didn't make it all the way, but still medaled. And for those, another thing, celebration that I missed on the 20th was la Journée Internationale de la Francophonie, International Day of the Francophonie. And as a French Canadian myself, very important day for us. So à tous mes amis francophones, un peu en retard, mais tout aussi sincère, bonne Journée Internationale de la Francophonie. All right, that's all I have for you. Amour et bisous. And we will